As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting may be convened into a closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any agenda item herein. The city of Rowlett reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or call the executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. Is there any public comment? In-person comments, registration forms are available inside City Hall. The committee may receive comments only on the agenda items listed below. And we'll get started with number 1. Consider approval of minutes from March 23, 2023 meeting.
Well, that's March 27th.
Says 23 here, by error. Or the agenda's error, let's say. All right, John. Anybody has any comments, amendments? John?
What the amendment is to read Monday, March 27th, 2023 versus
So sorry. Or 23rd, right?
No,
Was it the 23rd or the 27th?
it is the 27th. It was the
Oh, was it?
27th.
Ah, Eric.
Sorry about that.
Do I hear a motion to approve with amendment?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, minutes adopted as amended. Discuss and review potential street and alley projects for the 2024 bond election. Who's going to take that from, I mentioned
That would
Public
be-
Works?
Well, that would be me and Mina, our team here. So I'm Jeff, I want to introduce myself and everybody here.
Okay.
It's a collaborative effort. I'm Jeff Cohen, Interim Director of Engineering. This is Manal Mawadad. She's the Managing Director of Community Development and Engineering. We've got Mina Jacob here. She's the CIP Manager. And we've got Ronnie O'Brien back there, Director of Public Works. And I did see Tim Engel here. He's also on the engineering team. So, with that,
With that, please proceed.
we'd like to kick it off. Okay. So, we are here tonight to discuss the bond funds and the streets and whatnot, the alleys that we have looked at, and we would like to present to you, give you all an overview of the streets and alley conditions that are in need of repair and reconstruction throughout the city. And the first thing that we wanted to do is start off with a quick summary of what has already been done with previous bond monies. As far as the streets go, these are the streets that have either been completed or are under design or construction right now. And then we have some alleys also that have been either completed or are currently under design or construction. So as I said, that was a brief summary. It gives you an idea geographically of where everything is, where everything is landed. So now we want to talk about things that we need in the future that we could possibly fund with the bond funds that they're going to be seeking. The first thing that we wanted to summarize with you are current projects that are in need of additional funding. We have 3 of those. As you can see there, we've got the Merritt Interconnector, the Toller Business Park, Phase 2, and Country Fair Estates, phase two. And together, all three of them are just about $9 billion. So let me summarize these for you real quickly. The Merritt Road interconnector, that's a big one. Its design is currently at 60%, and the design effort to 100% has already been fully funded using the 2015 and 2021 bond funds. This project is a big project connecting George Bush with Cheesa Road. It's a 4-lane divided roadway, and it will include a pavement system and a drainage system. There's also a bridge over Muddy Creek, and it will also have sidewalks and bike trails, as well as street trees and some decorative street lighting. Now, I did want to point out in the bottom right-hand corner, for a lot of these slides, we are showing a water and sewer cost. Those water and sewer costs are not part of the costs that we are presenting here, but we did want to give you an idea of what these are. They have to be funded through a different funding mechanism, revenue bonds, utility revenue bonds that we sell every year, $7 million worth. That is the plan. The $7 million, it ensures that we can do some strategic projects and not increase the water rates for the residents.
I have a question on that
Sure.
before we go on. So I know the 2015 bond, it was funded for the design. So we're at 60% design, and I think the estimate back then was between 10 and $11 million for the actual construction.
Yes, I do have another slide here that will show the cost that we have, the current cost estimates, if that's where you're bringing it.
Oh,
Okay. So we see a cost shortfall, a gap of almost $4 million. And that comes from our estimated construction cost of approximately $22.78 million. And I need to point out that that cost excludes the portion of the roadway, it's about 1,100 feet, that Jackson Shaw, who has been granted zoning up in the North Shore area of the city, they're planning to build an industrial park on the east side of George Bush, and they are required to build a portion of the Merritt Road interconnector. So their portion is valued in 2027 dollars at almost $4.5 million. So if we take the cost that we've estimated and subtract out that 4.5, we are left with 22.76. And we also know that we have various funding sources totaling 18.83 million. So we take that from the construction costs, and we have almost a $4 million gap. That's where that 3.93 comes from.
how secure are the other funding sources? Are there firm?
Well, the bond funds are secured. Some of those did, they have passed. The escrow is on deposit with the city. The MCIP, we do still need to sign an AFA with the county, an advanced funding agreement, or whatever their term is for their agreements. So that has not been fully executed, but they did indicate that they will fund this project using the 1.33 figure. And then the surface transportation block grant funds, that goes with TxDOT. The AFA for that particular agreement is going to be on the May 2nd council. So that is proceeding. But then, of course, that 14 million comes with some strings, which the big one includes some very stringent, more stringent than what's already been done, environmental work, including permitting through the Corps. So that work has to be done. Once we get permitting, we will coordinate with TxDOT on a final will coordinate with TxDOT on the final alignment and complete the environmental work, and then we can go into final design and construction. So we estimate that to be about 2027. Yes?
And the funds for the additional environmental studies that would be needed for SEVG?
That's included in the design fee that's already been executed with Rees and Nichols. Yes, sir.
When do you think the additional environmental questions would be answered?
So it's going to be a couple of years. We're going to do the AFA with TxDOT, and then we have to get TxDOT's blessing on the alignment, because we don't want to do environmental work on an alignment that TxDOT's not happy with. So we're going to then we don't anticipate that to take much more than 6 months to get their sign off on that alignment. The alignment's been known for quite some time. They're familiar with it, and it doesn't impact their system at all. So I don't expect them to object to it. Excuse me, but we still need to work with them to do that. Once we get that done, we can begin the environmental work, and I believe that takes upwards of a year to collect and make a report, and it may even be more than a year. And then we've got to go to the Corps and get sign off from them. And if we need an individual permit from the Corps of Engineers, that's why we're looking at 2027. If they think that we can be covered under a general permit, a nationwide permit, that timeline will be shortened.
Is that one of the reasons that the design is not 100% at this time?
Yes.
That's over Muddy Creek, it's wetlands.
Yeah.
Is the majority of it going to be elevated or?
It is, yes, it'll be about but it'll be about the level of George Bush, which is quite elevated. So it'll be at the level of the bridge abutments, the bridge, and then the abutments are the same level, and then the road goes up to meet Shiza and up to meet George Bush. Yes.
Questions? Excuse me, is the construction cost, you said that's in today's dollars?
No, that number that you see there is in 2027 dollars.
$2027, okay.
And that's maybe I thought what you were going to ask. That is assuming a 5% inflation rate per year.
Okay, and that's based on what was the entity that prepared those estimates? Was that Freese and Nichols?
Freese and Nichols prepared the construction cost estimate,
Okay,
the preliminary 60% opinion of cost.
okay.
I took that number and converted it to 2027.
Extrapolated, okay.
Mhm.
Are there any contingencies?
There are
in that number?
contingencies in those numbers, that's right.
Okay.
I believe it's 20%.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no, I believe it's 15%.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Total Business Park, another project that is underway. Phases 1 and 2 were designed to 100% using the 2021 bond fund. Phase 1's construction has also been fully funded with those funds, but Phase 2 is in need of construction funding, and we are estimating the cost of that to be about $2.53 million. This is a basic street reconstruction, which is the pavement and a new drainage system, sidewalks, and of course, basic street lighting. Again, water and sewer have to be funded through revenue bonds. We certainly would want to do the water and sewer when we redo the street, and that cost is estimated at about $670,000.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes.
in that particular project, is there any consideration that can be given to the intersection between Rowlett and Century as far as turn lanes and
That is under design, and I'm gonna have to defer to Tim. He knows the design backwards and forwards.
There's no dedicated turn lane associated with that project. However, the roadway is being widened approximately 4 feet, so there will be additional space on Century.
The road, Rowlett Road, and the parking lot to Life Message are about that far away from each other. So putting a right turn lane in would have to take away space for parking for Life Message.
I'm just thinking about somebody's conversation, council,
Yeah.
and getting local truck traffic in and out of that.
The best way to do that is to find an alternative entry and exit, and that is going to be very challenging. That would take right-of-way acquisition, potentially, depending on how the conversations go with that, eminent domain. So that's a whole other, you could basically, if we were going to do that, call that phase 3. Because that's a multi-million-dollar solution.
Jeff, I got a question. So, what is driving the high priority of this? Is this being driven by business development, or I know where this is. I'm driving around there. What exactly is creating this sort of high-end priority when you compare it to other things around the city?
Well, there is Singleton and Long Lane. Century 2 has been a very bad state. Number one. Number two, this was a project that was authorized by the bond election in 21.
Yeah.
So that is the primary driver, and it is one of the last projects in that election that we are doing.
So it's already kind of been pre-funded, so this is just sort of,
Yes,
let's finish it
with
off.
the exception of
that-
phase 2.
Okay.
So some projects in that cycle were funded fully for design, phase 1 and 2, for example, with the ability to move forward with construction of phase 1. So these are those remnants, if you want to call it that, to allow and put municipal funding for construction.
Also, this is one of the poorest PCI-rated roads in the city.
Okay.
And because it supports industry and economy for us, that also added an edge to it. And we get consistently complaints from businesses that would want to move there,
Right.
but just don't want to do it because the construction of these roads were built to support single-family neighborhoods, not heavy truck traffic.
So there is a development component to it.
Absolutely.
A macro development component to it. Okay. What, in the 2021 bond, how much was that bond?
I would have to go back and look that up. I don't have that information handy.
1.5 or 2?
1.5. Wait a minute, the entire 2021 bond, or just this one
Just
project?
this one.
I can pull it up real quick. Give me 2 seconds, Mark.
2001?
Yeah, I did type that. Hypothetically, 2 seconds, ish, 25. Actually, I have to find it as part of the problem.
Country Interstates is the third project that is underway right now. We should be going to bid for phase 1 very shortly. Phases 1 and 2 were designed using the 21 bond again, and phase 1 construction was funded also with those 21 bonds. This is another project which just coincidentally has an estimated cost of $2.53 million. Again, a drainage system under pavement with sidewalks and street lighting. And of course, there's water and sewer that need to be redone as well, and that's about $830,000.
So Toller Business Park in 2021 was funded at $2,157,000, and this one was funded $1,144,000 for phase 1 in design. Phase 1 completion and phase 2 design.
Right. So now we would like to summarize, give you a very high-level perspective on the 100 worst streets and the 100 worst alleys as rated by PCI, the PCI Pavement Condition Index of Rating. So this slide has 50 streets. There's 100 streets on this list, so I had to break it up into 2 slides. As you can see, we got the PCI ratings. These streets are not in ranked order; they're in alphabetical order, and the costs associated with the streets are listed there as well. But the big takeaway, I think, is the bottom at the slide. These 50 streets are 69 million, and then we have these other streets, and they are at 50 million, and so the total for all the streets is 116 million. And
So you're gonna have to apply for the lottery.
right,
We win.
right. I think Mr.
So what's
Coakley has
that, what's that process?
For the long.
the lottery.
Oh,
We
no.
all go to the gas station.
Oh, I know. But then you're gonna take the 100 streets and put it in the ditch. I see my street on there, so I'm like, you know.
Oh, then you can't say anything, sir.
So,
If your street's on there.
Well, I think Mr. Coakley had a question.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, Jeff, do you know how many total linear feet or miles of street?
We do know that because we had to count that to come up with the cost, but I didn't list that here and I don't have that information at my fingertips, but if you'd like, we can get that information for you tomorrow.
Is it the linear feet of worst condition roads?
These
No,
100 streets.
these 100
These.
streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
so the PCI index, is it the higher the number, the worse it
No,
is?
no,
It's
the
the opposite?
opposite, yes. The lower the number, the worse it is.
Okay.
So you've got a range from about $300,000 to $2 million, depending upon the alley.
Right.
Okay.
Depending on the length of the street, basically is what it comes down to. Yes.
Now, are you suggesting taking it by the PCI index or some other method?
We are presenting this information so you have an idea of what is out there, what is possible, what the potential
Okay.
projects
Well,
would
then I
be.
would prefer to see it ranked.
We can sort this list and do that. That's not an
Okay.
issue. It would just merely be sorting the list by that middle column.
Okay. You know, it seems like alphabetical doesn't serve any
Yeah.
purpose.
So it doesn't find your street.
Not here.
Oh, you mean, John, is
Custom
your
finder
street up there?
No,
What
but
even if
she would.
Just polling, how many people in the street that's street?
I mean, we'll have to email that.
Jeff, I
No.
have another question.
Yes.
Understand that these are ranked PCI by their, first, these streets are ranked by their PCI, and if we rank them from worst to best and, figure out where our funding costs cut off and say, okay, that's great, do those. My question would be, would there be any benefit in looking at the ranking to include maybe consolidating streets in the same area, or that go out saying?
Yes. So yes, part of this presentation will include that perspective.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. That's a good comment. I appreciate it. Yes. Yes. But let me present some of. I think there's another question here though.
So cost per mile of new road is how much approximately that's baked into this? Or is it per block, per square yard?
She did the math. I don't have that number.
Because it
But-
may depend.
And per square yard. What was it per square yard? Do you remember? Okay. We'll get that. We'll get that. We'll look that up but we do have that number.
Quarter mile, I just
Excuse me, is this residential only, or is there a mix?
This is residential.
If they happen to be residential, but that's not the search criteria. I mean, every street was evaluated and most of the arterials collected.
So it wasn't based on residential, commercial. This is just based on solely the fact these are the worst streets.
These are the worst streets.
Okay.
PCI based.
Do we have rooftops or counts?
We can get that, we can get that.
That's important.
And just real quick, for those of us who may not know where you are in this line of evolution, how do you grade your street? How is the street graded? Used to be people walked and looked at it.
We're gonna do that.
Right.
Now we,
So, well, you mean how is it rated with the PCI?
Yes.
It's a machine that digitally scans the street, records that image or records the data, and then has an algorithm to evaluate, and it does it almost, I don't want to say inch by inch, but there is a lot of data points, whereas before, when it was done by hand, if you will, it was 100-foot random samples. So this is continuous.
And so this truck drove every street and alley in the city, but it also, I think, even looks at the subgrade to see if there's been any faults in that as well. So it's, I think, radar penetrating, okay. So it's the most accurate way that we have.
And we were able to capture that data much shorter time frame than we would imagine.
We did the whole city before. We had to do one quadrant of the city a year. So it took a total of 4 years to get a full PCI.
and I just wanted to make sure that this in fact was using it in.
Yes, it is.
And Jeff will make mention of that on how we got to this point too.
So, Gil.
So with the PCI, does that take into consideration how many trips on those roads? Because
No,
the
traffic
PCI
counts,
may be dictating that road be repaired, but if it's less frequently traveled than say one that's
That's
the
something
prioritization.
that we can have a conversation about as we
Okay.
move forward.
The prioritization is going to come down to this board
Yeah.
and staff
okay.
to determine how to prioritize it. You're getting raw data saying these are the worst roads.
Right.
Now, how do you prioritize
Right.
what projects do you want to see funded based on the prioritization that you're going to put in this data?
Gotcha. I was just trying to gather information on what encompasses all of that data if that was taken into consideration.
The PCI is just straight to
Condition of the-
PCI.
the condition
That's
of the
it,
pavement.
yeah.
Right, it's just the condition, it's not the trips.
So this will be some food for thought, and then from here, the conversation will evolve to what areas do you want to look at, what areas are you considering, and for what reason. Full knowing that we have some challenges with these top 100 at the moment.
Gotcha.
So again, we were able to list out the top 100 alleys as well, and the total is almost 33 million. So that's one perspective that we wanted to present to you, to give you an idea of what's out there in the city. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, and this might be a little premature, but it looks to me like it's a maximum PCI of 50 and everything below is the, no, I didn't say anything above 50.
Well, it just happened,
That
that's
just
what,
happened.
yes.
That's what happens.
Because the question I have, and it's, like I said, probably premature, but as we're getting to the point where we're trying to make these decisions, can you give us photographic examples of what
Yes.
50
Of course.
is compared to?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, that's coming up.
Okay,
Yes.
now there you go.
Okay. So, yes, okay. So, we've seen the top 100. We wanted to show you the top 25 and give you a little more in-depth view of the top 25. So, the top 25 worst, that's right.
That's worse.
Yes, at by PCI, roughly $30 million. And of course, there's about 10 million in water and sewer that need to be done as well. These are the list of those streets, and here is a geographic representation of the streets. This is a map of some of the streets, the white numbers being the PCI numbers. Here are some photos of these streets. And then another few streets. These do group rather well, and that didn't go unnoticed. So here are some photographs again of some of these streets. We've got Woodrow by itself, and these two streets by themselves. There are some photographs of those three streets. You can see some of the crack sealing that's been done. This is over on the east end of town, in the Wood Lake area.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes?
just out of curiosity, you kind of passed up on that comment, these group well together already. Which really kind of then begs to ask you, okay, well, what developer and who did he use to lay those streets? And see if there's any correlation there, because there may be some.
Even if that were,
The design standards were way different, 25, 30 years ago, when these neighborhoods were developed.
and 25, 30 is not a bad lifespan for concrete.
For neighborhood engineered roads.
Yeah. So, and even if we could identify the developer. I think I have the records, but
Yeah.
there's nothing that we can do to help that, have them
No.
do anything.
I wasn't looking at that.
Okay.
I was more looking at what could be improved in their process, so as we go forward.
We've thickened the concrete, and we're looking at revising the base as well. Okay. We've got two streets here, 30, 31. Here's some photographic examples of what they look like. Yes, sir.
Just a question, so when we're talking streets and you've got it identified there by the highlight, you're talking the entire street, we're not talking about replacing panels and pavement, correct?
At this point, that is correct.
Okay,
I do have something to say about that
okay,
later on.
okay, I'll wait, that's
Okay.
fine.
Fawn Valley. This is more of a scaling problem, but it is in pretty sorry state. Here's another group of streets with corresponding photographs. And I believe Creekview is the last one. Some standing water and some potholes. So those are the top 25. Again, they're alphabetical, but we can rank them very easily. But the big takeaway is that together they would constitute about $30,000 in repairs.
Yeah,
A million. That's Ronnie was trying to tell me million, I didn't. I apologize. And then, of course, the 10 for the revenue bonds as well. So, as has been discussed, there is another way of looking at this. We did think about grouping the streets by neighborhood. We think there are some benefits to that, including economies of scale and mobilization, savings on mobilization costs, better tracking of the construction. There are benefits. Here is a list of streets. Many of them did make the top 25 anyway, and this is a map of those streets that I just showed you, and then this is a map with the top 25 worst streets overlaid, and you can see there is a bit of overlap there, especially in the southwest quadrant of the city.
I know we haven't talked about alleys yet, but do we have the overlay of streets and the alleys that are in the worst shape? And can you,
I don't believe I combined those two maps together. Yeah. Right. but they're not mapped with the streets.
They were connected to.
Not necessarily, yeah. And we can, as we go through this, we can revise this list. And it might be preferential to take that green stuff up in the northeast quadrant and use that as a neighborhood reconstruction project. But that's something I think we're open. We need your feedback on it. But to summarize the neighborhoods, so we have Toller Bay Estates. We were estimating that to be 16 million with a 5.7 million cost in water and sewer revenue bonds. And this is the Toller Bay Estates part of the subdivision, part of town. And certainly, if you remember from the slide, there was quite a few of these that are top 25 worst. And you know, it may even be something where we don't need to do this long street, the long street, the big red long street on the bottom left is Faulkner, and maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we can look at panel replacements for that street. Toller Bay Estates, there's some photographs.
So a question I have is that many of these roads could use panel replacements, but not a total reconstruction. So panel replacement will provide longevity for the road infrastructure for years. I mean, you're basically reconstructing a panel at a time that will last 25 years. So many of those roads, especially in Toller Bay, as a resident there, do not need full reconstruction at all. In fact, Westminster just got a full, brand new panel replacements all up and down Westminster that, you know, make it as good as new. Same with Faulkner. You know, there's just a couple of areas on Faulkner that could use some panel replacements, but
Especially Faulkner. Yes.
definitely not total reconstruction.
Hold that thought.
Yeah. Okay.
So one other thing to remember is that panel reconstruction doesn't always qualify for bond dollars,
Right.
because that one, so we fund that, like, as you know, out of our maintenance, our
Well, no,
cash
we
CIP.
funded panel replacements out of the 2021 bond. There's $1
That
million.
is true.
3 million, 1 million a year, yes.
Correct. So we do that. Do we need to put more in panel replacement? Probably.
That we could.
More
But-
than
But I think panel replacements not necessarily the answer if you're looking at other infrastructure replacement at the same time, like your sewer and water.
Right. That would not. That's right. That's right.
If you're still running clay pipes, you probably want to prioritize that street. Yeah.
University Place, 6.5 million. Some photos on the right there. That's a map of University Place. Again, many of these streets did show up on the top 25 worst. There's some more photos. The Peninsula, number 1 and 2, 10, a little more than 10 million, with 2.5 in water and sewer costs. Now this one did not show up on the top 25, but we worked with Public Works, and we know that these streets contain clay sewer lines and ductile iron water pipe, and so it may be advantageous and beneficial to schedule this as a project. Just putting it out there. There's no right or wrong answer here. There are some photos of the street conditions. Highland Meadows, number 2, 7.3 million, 2.7 in water and sewer. This is just south of Highland Meadows, number 1. Maybe we want to simply consider Highland Meadows, number 1, which I showed you earlier in the top 25. But these streets do look like they're in need of some reconstruction. One thing that we did throw on here is Schrady Road. It doesn't necessarily have a low PCI number, but it is an asphalt street. It has received a lot of crack sealing, as you can see. Some of the edges have been depressed, but what I thought was another factor is the fact that we've built fire station number 2 here, and that's going to add a lot of load to it. A lot of the vacant lots now have come in for development applications. That's going to continue to add load to this street. Not to mention that we've built some park trails that terminate at this street, but they have nowhere to land. There's no sidewalk here to land on. So those are some considerations. I think that
Would this be 2-lane concrete?
I-
I think that's, yeah. 2-lane.
2-lane concrete. Yes.
Oh,
Says
there it
right,
is.
yes. Me too. Because I wasn't thinking. I think Ms. Robertson.
Yes, on the development applications, is there an opportunity there for impact fees to help offset some of those costs?
No, I don't believe that Schrady.
Well, there we go.
Well, in this particular case, I don't believe Schrady is an impact fee eligible project. Impact fees have to go to specific projects that have already been identified. Now, we're about to do another impact fee update. We can include Schrady Road as one of those roads, and maybe we can do that then. But also know that when the adjacent road is not impact fee eligible, there is an obligation by the developer to improve a substandard road. If it's substandard, and what I mean by substandard is it's not concrete with curb and gutters and drainage. Even if it were concrete, curb and gutters and drainage, but in a very bad condition, that's not substandard. That's maintenance that we need to do. That cannot be put on the developer. But this being an asphalt road, they are obligated to improve it, but only their portion, their half.
Gotcha.
There's not a lot of residential development on Schrady, and there probably
These
won't
are
be because of
commercial.
drainage and stuff. But that's also a major reliever of heavy traffic on Miller and 66,
And
and would prevent people from going down Woodside.
Yes.
There will soon be a traffic light too at Schrady and Dow Rock, which will add to the usage of Schrady Road.
Yeah,
even more so.
yeah. So, things to consider. Okay, so this is a summary of the neighborhood streets, and we have a grand total of $46.8 million for that. So now let's talk about alleys. Alleys,
Jeff,
yes,
moment, on the PCI index, you said that you used a machine or essentially a radar, LiDAR. Is there also a consideration of drainage? I mean, because I know the streets just south of here were flooded whenever there was a rain, for example, because the drainage did not exist. So my question is, on the PCI index, does that include that factor?
well, the PCI would not include that, no.
Okay, well, I would personally think
What?
very important that it would be included, because otherwise people are continuing to have floods in their streets. I mean, that's the context within which
So-
they live.
Yeah,
So, yeah, Ronnie.
I just want to let you know, when we did the PCI ratings, anything that was a dip, it was considered in the PCI. So if there was an area that held water and it picked it up, an easy way to explain
These
it
are
is
streets that are not draining at all because they don't have a drainage system.
so it did not take into account non-drainage system streets, but it did take into account low areas in the streets and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay.
So I think that's something that we can look at. I don't have any scientific mechanism that looks at the city and know where those drainage problems are. It's a very anecdotal right now.
It's either garbage or drainage is what
One of the things,
Because I'm seriously concerned with regard to whether or not it's being included in the PCI index. I mean, because that's a valuable way in which to measure the need to replace the street.
It could be
At the same
another
time.
factor.
That's part of when we add our priorities as a board in, is a factor that we can consider. The PCI is really a scientific study getting that road's condition. But it's up to the humans to apply those exterior issues separate from the actual road.
I think that's totally right.
And like Gail said, or asked about, was the use of the street, and just how much traffic is on that street. Does it
Another
justify-
factor,
Yeah,
yes.
does it justify the cost in order to rebuild it?
I think, and in that, we would just look at the rooftops.
Okay.
I don't have, even when I go and update the master thoroughfare plan, which I'd like to do, I won't be collecting traffic data on the local residential streets.
Well, I'm just thinking about ultimately when we come to make a judgment and we put values in with regard to.
Those are excellent factors.
These are factors,
And we can
hopefully
we can
have
look
some
at that.
kind of information to work from.
Yeah. No, absolutely. When you narrow down the streets like this, it really is, I mean, this is based on, scientific data, and it's up to us as human beings to apply our knowledge in terms of the exterior uses of the road. So if there are bar ditches, and okay, so that's a priority that we need to fix, or there's clay pipes, so hey, that's a priority that's other than the PCI that we have to apply as a road.
Thank you.
And just one other point real quick. So when we look at these streets, we will be able to know, because we have data, we can look at the mapping, whether there's a drainage system on that street or not. And when the street does go into design, if we so choose that street to be a project, then the engineering will include drainage structures if it is needed, if the analysis shows that it's needed.
Because ultimately it comes down to the dollars.
Right, so the amounts that you have in the bottom right-hand corner where you're saying that the water and sewer has to be under a different bond program.
Right.
So is that only replacing what's existing, or is that taking into consideration adding drainage where there isn't drainage?
So those water and sewer costs do not include drainage. Drainage is included in the pavement cost. That can be capitalized.
Okay,
Okay?
so this is water and
Water
sanitary?
and sanitary
Sanitary,
sewer.
okay.
I apologize.
Oh, storm
I wasn't
sewer,
clear,
okay.
yes.
And electrical infrastructure as well. You have to run street lights.
We do.
So that's an expense as well.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So, I showed you the list of top 100 alleys, and then I focused on the 25 streets. So I'd like to focus on the alleys as well. Top 25 alleys. That's a map of where the alleys are. The little blue-green symbols are the alleys. And oddly enough, these did group rather well. Also, we were able to group them because they fell into a convenient subdivision. Toller Bay Estates 1 and 4 has 3 of those alleys. You can see that grouping right there. There's some photos of the alleys. And Toller Ridge number 2, projecting $1.4 million. And that has 3 alleys. You can see some photos to the right. That's the map of Toller Ridge and those alleys. And there's some more photographs. Ridgecrest Edition, 155
You have lights,
gallons.
you can't participate in this discussion, sir.
Strike that.
Next to Springfield Lane, right there. Westwood Estates, number 5, 600,000. One alley, Laughlin, next to Laughlin Lane, but it's a rather long alley. That's why the cost is so high. Westwood Estates, number 4, another about 600,000. near Sarah Drive, which is right here near Charlotte and Miller Road intersection. New storage place is going there. They can't use the alleys, so they don't.
They don't have a security?
Yeah,
The residents were very clear about that. Well, you weren't there. Yeah. I'm telling you.
no. Toller Estates number 3, 800,000. Two alleys there. There's a map of them. And Highland Meadows number 1, 117,000. Denver, near Denver Street, it's a really short alley, so it's rather low in cost. But it is rather tore up, as you can see in the photos. Lake Crest Estates, another 170,000. Crestview and Rock Bluff Drive. There's the map. And Lake Crest Estates, numbers 2, 3, and 4, $2.4 million. There are 6 alleys. It's quite an interesting little map. Quite extensive alley repair in this neighborhood. And there's some photos of those alleys. And Princeton Point 1A, 900,000 almost. Near Aberdeen, Manchester, along Princeton Road there, and Flower Hill, almost $500,000. One alley, long, near between Astor and Tulip, just north of the community development. And then College Park down by Cheeser Road, 360,000. It parallels Cheeser Road. It's in kind of bad condition too. Photos don't do it justice. Yeah, grass growing along. I mean,
Well, if it's anything like Cheeser Road itself,
yeah.
people pretty much does.
Jeff, what's the paving profile for the alleys? What's the city standard for alley paving?
So it is a V ditch, that's 8 inches thick on the sides and 5 inches in the middle, underlain by our typical base. If it's a new alley, we call for a lime and cement base, stabilized base, but on reconstructed alleys, it gets kind of difficult to do that, so we just go flex base.
Flex base? And still the 5-inch profile?
Yeah.
5 inches, at least in my experience, is typically for, parking traffic.
But it's 8 inches, that's in the center and 8 inches at the side.
Okay,
Wheel
so-
traffic.
Right.
Okay, so the 8 inches, I'm sorry, I guess I'm not envisioning how that
So
breaks
a
down.
V,
Right.
8 inches at the sides
Okay.
and 5 inches
And 5 in the middle,
at the
because
flow
the
line.
middle is really where
It used to be
the
like-
drainage is.
Right.
3 inches
Okay.
on the side and 0.1
Okay.
inches in the middle.
So I guess my point that I was trying to figure out in my head is that sufficient for the traffic load of the trash trucks, which is probably the biggest offender
Right.
So
It is.
on.
speaking of that,
Yes.
Yes.
our new vendor
Yes.
will be using lighter trucks than what has currently been used. So that's also a factor to consider as well.
Yes.
And the alleys as well, the alleys back 25, 30 years ago were not engineered like they are today. You're in the construction industry.
So together, those top 25, just about $10 million. That's what we're estimating. And I did want to talk a little bit about the selection criteria. I believe you've all been emailed the selection criteria list. It had these words and it had this list, but it went into more in-depth commentary about the selection criteria. We try to use this, of course. I think, of course, the biggest factor is the PCI rating. So these are the selection criteria that we used. Again, the PCI rating is probably near the top of the list. We did, however, consider the materials and age of the underlying utilities, like in the peninsula or whatever one that was that had the clay tile sewer and ductile iron water. It's also costing time for maintenance and upkeep, and whether we can do panel replacements, whether that would suffice rather than reconstructing the entire street or alley. And so, as we've discussed, we did look at grouping them. I think that grouping them in that regard does promote an efficient use of the design and construction costs that we have. Much, that those are limited. It does give us a better chance to go in and upgrade the underlying utilities, which is cost effective. And of course, during construction, it helps to reduce mobilization costs. It helps us to track and coordinate the construction better, contracting wise. But I also think that it helps to promote harmony and coherence among the neighbors when they see that their neighbor's street is getting redone, and they're wondering why their street's not getting redone, and then you come along in a few weeks and you start working on their street. And that does.
And then now we have a traffic problem. And we've cut their cables,
Right.
so they don't have internet.
And there's dust all over everything, and then there's mud.
We ran over their water.
But by
Yeah.
doing that versus panels, you have people that can get together and complain together, so they can sympathize.
Right. So in terms of the panel replacement and whatnot, I do want to address that a little bit, and you mentioned it as well. We went out and took a lot of these photos, and when we did so, we saw that some of the streets, although they had, or alleys, had low or moderately low PCIs. When we got there, they didn't look in such bad shape, like some of the streets in the neighborhood. And we noticed that, yes, a panel replacement might be a better use of city money. And when we asked our consultant who did the PCI data collection to give us a list of top 100 streets, they gave it to us, and what they did was they used an arithmetic average. So if you have a number of data points and you take them and you add them up and you divide by that number, you have an arithmetic average. And I wanted to show the task force here that could have an effect on the rating of the PCI rating of the overall street. Because if you have a street, let's say that's 1,000 feet long, and you break it up into segments like that might, for instance, have those PCI ratings. If you can see in the first column under PCI, if you just take all of those PCIs, add them up, and then divide by 4, you get 43 as an average PCI rating. But if you use the length of those streets to help weight the PCI rating by multiplying the length by the PCI and adding those up and then dividing by the entire length, your PCI rating falls to 34. And I think in the cases where we saw the street conditions better than what the PCI rating might have suggested, this may have happened in reverse.
Well, I was going to say, because if you go back the other way and take out the first two segments of that street, the 450 feet, you're left with the other 650 feet that probably needs work.
Right.
So to do the whole street in this manner, I'm not sure that's necessarily advantageous.
Well, maybe, but if you're going to do the whole street, you're going to go in and want to do the water and the sewer.
If that's the case,
And so you're probably going to wind up doing that entire block.
I agree.
A block is probably a unit that we're looking at. Okay, let me move on. So summary real quickly here. we have the streets that, the projects that need additional funding that were funded in previous bond elections is about 9 million. The top 25 worst PCI streets is about 30 million. The neighborhood streets works out to be about 46.8 million. And the alleys that we just went over is about 10 million. There are those numbers. And if you're wondering, there's no grand total here because, as I pointed out, the top 25 tend to overlap some of those neighborhood projects that we looked at. But just so you know, if we took the top 25, forget the neighborhood streets, we'd be looking at 48 million, summing those up. And then if we threw out the top 25 and went with the neighborhoods protocol, we'd be looking at 66.
And we have parks.
And then we have parks. Yes. So,
And what's our bond capacity? Was it 50 or 60 million?
50 is what I thought. I keep hearing the number 50.
By the next meeting, we will know exactly what that number is.
Yeah, the $10 million delta didn't just go anywhere, so we got to figure that out. Because I was told it was somewhere up to 60.
So in the delivery method for bidding these projects, I assume is that competitive sealed proposal?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. When these are finally whittled down and you all make a recommendation to council and then council votes on an actual package and then the voters approve that bond election, then we go to projects and those projects are competitive bids.
So realistically, what would you think the total dollars under construction at any given time would be? I mean, this obviously
I feel
is something that all
monthly-
be done at once, so I'm assuming it's gonna kind of be consistent through a period of however
Well,
long, 2
I-
years, 3 years?
Oh,
So, I mean,
I'm sorry. Timeline or
well, it's a timeline and dollars within that timeline. I mean, are you, could you say that the average, over the course of, say a 6-month project? I don't know, take it.
well,
We're gonna have, in any 6-month period, we're gonna have $10 million worth of work going on, or $4 million, or $2.5 million.
I
Do you
could
have a feel for
certainly
something like that?
calculate that, but I can give you from my experience, I've been doing a monthly report now for some time, and I do report on the amount of construction that we do in any given month, and it does vary. I've seen as low as 5 and as much as 12
Okay,
million dollars in any given month.
okay.
If that gives you any idea, and it varies month to month, but it's in that ballpark range.
And next question, I'm kind of probing, because I'm thinking outside the box, so I'm asking questions here to see if there's anything that, may be advantageous. So, and that's spread over generally 1 or 2 contractors, 2 or 3 contractors,
We
kind of average?
We have four contractors
Okay.
working now, I believe.
Okay,
I
anywhere
don't,
from 5 to 12 million over
Right.
a period of time, okay.
I don't, we may have as many as 5 or 6 at the most, but I don't see us having any more than 6 at any given time. That would be a lot. That would be a lot at one time.
I'm thinking outside the box, I'm trying to think economy of scale, and, what can we do? I mean, it may, and, again, I'm not overly familiar with how we have to procure things.
Literally job to job.
As a city, but, I'm wondering, I mean, is there an opportunity to, I don't know, for the city to take numbers on the mud, on the ready mix, and get a couple of ready mix contractors or ready mix suppliers that are kind of locked in, and maybe some rebar, so that the
That'd be a lot of
contractors that are
we
bidding
would need
it
a lot more you.
have to.
Not only, I don't
Well,
recommend that.
Well, I'm just saying that they would have to pull from there because the city already kind of has some
So you're not
unit
suggesting
costs locked in.
packaging, but rather going to specific
have like a general services.
So having an
Yes.
efficacy in the type of function for that project is what you're referring to?
Yes, where
Or
there's maybe
materials.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, where you can kind of get a lock-in. I mean, if you go to 3 different ready-mix contractors and say, we've got however many thousands of yards of concrete, and you're gonna have an opportunity, to quote these general contractors, these road contractors on this, you need to, give us your best numbers, as opposed to, the contractor going on a $1 million project and, and his cost for mud is, $140 a yard, where it could be, I don't know, $120 a yard. I mean, so I'm just thinking outside the box. I'm just throwing out.
And I do see Ronnie O'Brien, Public Works Director, shaking his head. Ronnie, you want to chime in?
So the first thing we don't do is give him means and methods.
Right.
That's what that's called. When we have a private concrete crew that works out of Public Works that does panels,
Right.
and we have our own concrete truck.
Right.
So we go for the big bang, best for the buck.
Right.
Is what we try to do. But with a contractor, when you're bidding out, let's say 4 or 5 blocks, or however it's bid out, however you choose, then it's bid out on the best price. That contractor goes to A, B, C, and D, and he
Right.
gets the best price, and he gets the best price on iron, and then it's bid out like that as a package. It's not, I mean, trying to secure $127 versus $227 per yard of concrete, that's what they do. If we were to go out and secure all this concrete and then try to bid it out, or let them know, then we would be in their means and methods at that point. And there would be probably raising the prices at that point, is what.
So,
that-
but Gail, that is a very good point worth taken. And I think it's something that the team can look back and talk about
Yes.
and determine if it is possible to do that. And if not, why not? But I think there's an opportunity there, maybe.
I'm just thinking outside the box.
It's good,
Just
if
throwing
we
it out
can
there.
save money by doing some of these things on our own,
Yeah, I mean,
then let's do
obviously,
it.
we've got a huge budget deficit, so, we can't just kind of sit here and, wringing our hands and saying, okay,
Let's do the same thing every
yeah,
year.
how can we do this? How can we get the funding? I mean, let's think smarter, work smarter, not harder, and just think outside the box. So I don't know if something like that would work or not, and I'm not speaking about specifically means and methods. I mean, I'm familiar with that. I'm just asking, is there some economy of scale from a procurement standpoint, a buy board type thing?
Yes.
That could be, that you could say, okay, we're gonna put this out for bid, and, here's 3 ready-mix contractors, we don't care who you use, you still get the competition amongst the 3, but minimally, we have those numbers locked in because they know that they've got a 33% chance of getting umpteen thousand, cubic yards of mud.
Very good point.
So-
I would challenge staff to just look at that and see if that's
Just-
possible.
Yeah.
You had,
I was just thinking if you did that, then, the city's purchasing the material, and the contractor's installing it, and the street fails, and liability is where?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that the city would purchase it, I'm saying that the city would,
Guarantee it,
no,
the
would,
purchase?
would solicit pricing to lock in unit costs for the concrete ready mix.
so basically,
That's a guarantee. I think that's a guarantee.
what does that mean?
We would be guaranteeing to that successful bidder that we would, that
We
they
purchase
would
X
be
amount.
selling X many yards of concrete in a year. That's just saying.
So any.
Otherwise,
So
how
any
would
kind-
they give us, how would they lock in that price?
Right.
It would have to be a guarantee.
I don't think it's how you write the narrative, but I don't know, again, I mean, it's public procurement, so I'm not sure how that would work from a municipal standpoint.
We can
We
definitely
can look
look
at it.
into it, because if the city were to validate saying, okay, contractor A, we've got 20,000 linear feet of work that needs to be done. As a result of this, everybody jump in because we are able to secure or lock in this rate for this product. We need to run it by legal, obviously, because public versus private procurement. And then you would have very active and engaged contractors who would want to be part of that 33 1/3% of whatever it is.
Right, exactly. So, you know, I mean, if they work out.
And the
It's
federal,
worth looking into for
and the
sure.
federal government does it all the time,
Yes.
under the
Yeah.
government service contract.
Yes.
So, I mean,
It's
again,
it's
that's,
almost,
They have.
you know, you look
Yeah.
at 80% of your you know, what 20% of the material constitutes 80% of your cost, work on managing that.
There you go.
And-
I like where that's going. More ideas like that we need, but I think it's worth investigating the opportunity, because if we can save costs by doing our own, you know, acquiescing, we're not acquiescing, we don't take control of it, but in terms of unit costs, then we can potentially save hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yeah, I mean, all we're doing is providing, you know, an opportunity for those contractors that are bidding to go to, you know, say the 3 or 4 ready-mix contractors that have already agreed that, you know, they're gonna quote, you know, $127 a yard instead of 147 or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Prior to the next meeting, we'll run it by our legal team to see what our legal counsel says. We'll definitely have answers for that at the next meeting, unless, okay, we'll give it to you soon, John. See, I saw that.
Gail, that be with you understanding that any bidding contractor would not be required to use those.
Yeah.
We get our best number,
yeah,
we
they
say,
would-
here it is, but you
exactly.
go do what you want.
Right, yeah, because we don't want to tie their hands.
Right.
If they have a better deal, then they have a better deal.
Right, they may have a better deal.
But then again, you gotta be careful with
Yeah,
that.
that's-
You're saying as a city, we're committed to, you know, providing you with a volume, which now, if the
Now you
contract goes to somebody else consistently, because they got a much better price, then
I think
where's your
that-
commitment?
Right, I mean, I think there's
Contractor.
probably
There's
some,
gonna be
you know, there's probably some language that you can do there that makes it so that it's not a commitment, because we can't commit, I mean, heck, if, you know.
We could be committing ourselves to spending more money, and we don't want to do that.
Right, exactly, but, you
But I
know,
think this may help buy down some of that cost as well. So if there's an opportunity to provide these as potential vendors to utilize, not you must, then I think that's worth thinking about.
yeah, I mean, it's worth asking the question, because, I mean, I think we just need to be very creative in our thought processes to, and that's a heavy lift right there, what Jeff just presented.
Brian?
Yes.
What is your annual budget to do these types of projects from general budget?
You mean staff time? What are you talking about?
Do you mean the CIP budget?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have so much bond capacity, we've got so many projects, I'm gonna ask this to probably every presenter. On an ongoing basis, do you normally fix alleys and spend $500,000 every year out of normal budget, or $1 million? Or how much of that normal budget could deal with some of these, so we know how much capacity?
Oh, you maintenance budget, is that
What
what
is your maintenance budget to do these things?
Well, we're not necessarily going to pull out of the general fund dollars that we're using for ongoing maintenance to pay for, to add capacity to the bond. I mean, plus
No,
we're
but-
really good.
No,
But the question is, how much money are you spending on this street annually in the condition it is? Just
Oh.
maintain- In other words, if we go ahead and redo that street, you're gonna not have to spend that.
Oh, yeah. So like not doing potholes and not doing concrete lift through the foam protection.
Yeah, other projects, how much would be?
That will take a lot of data collection.
I
Well,
mean, just be rough.
we,
3 million.
in 2022, the general fund capital maintenance program, this is in the budget, was almost $6.6 million.
That's
the-
not all roads.
No, that's true.
There's a certain
Alley
amount allocated for
improvements.
alley, too.
3 million, Ronnie, okay.
Ronnie,
So
that piece of-
In your last bond, you gave us $3 million, $1 million per year, which we divide up into those programs. And then there's an additional $300,000 of funding for foam injection, and then I think another $250 or $275 that goes towards panel replacement. And then we have found some other money in the general fund, so.
Well, so exclude that panel replacement out of the bond, because he's asking besides bond. So that is a bond project, the
Right.
money that you get are bonds.
Right.
So minus that
That
would
would
be.
be $1 million less, so it'd be about $2 million
Right.
is what we're doing here.
Good questions, Al.
And that's strictly all concrete, what we're doing.
Okay.
We also have an asphalt budget. that does
Next,
asphalt.
Any other
Next step.
questions?
right? We have a meeting in May, and Parks is going to present a similar presentation on their projects. In late May, we would like, the schedule right now is a tour of the projects. And then in June, we begin to rank the projects.
Sorry. No, listen.
This schedule's not written in stone.
I wasn't talking to you, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I interrupted, I'm sorry.
So,
I think at the last meeting, we had talked about dates for the tour.
okay,
Had
That
we
was
agreed
for
on
the
anything?
facilities. That tour was for facilities.
Okay.
This is for these projects that we're proposing. So one of the things we need to, I think, Chair, you had asked a question of, can we have extra meetings? Because you don't have a lot of time. You have a very tight schedule. If we're heading into touring late May, we absolutely need to come to some sort of resolution or semblance of what it is you want to see. Do you want to continue focusing on the top 25 that have just been presented to you? Do you want to look at, so we will send you this PowerPoint presentation so you can look at it.
When we did it, at least on the one I was on previously, we didn't necessarily have to get like public safety presentation or the parks one, but just kind of the recommended things that city staff had already put together, and just kind of did a day and hit some of the big road problems, some of the big drainage problems, some of the parks upgrades that we're looking at, some of the public safety items. So if we can encompass, if we can get that all into one tour day
Yes.
and set that date, I think that would be helpful.
Would you mind if we put some of that together and shot some dates out via email? Obviously, don't do a reply all, but we'll get them to you and we'll reach consensus on what those could be. Everybody come up with some, we'll shoot some options out, everybody select one or two of them, and then
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think we're generally, based on the conversation, you were looking at mid to late May to do
Correct.
that? Okay, so everybody kind of look at your calendars and see what looks best. Knowing from doing this previously, we're not going to get everybody who's going to be able to make it. So we'll just try to get a majority day.
wonderful.
It's a fun day.
if it's a majority, do we have to publish an agenda?
Yes, we will
Yes.
publish the agenda for a possible forum regardless, and then we will ensure that everything is intact from that standpoint. And then we'll figure out how to get everybody into.
You will be distributing this presentation.
Yes, well, actually what we'll do is we'll put it up on, I'm assuming that y'all have access to the SharePoint. No, they don't.
We will
Okay, yes,
send-
we will send it then, yes.
Pretty cheap.
Okay, so we'll send
You're
that.
more than welcome to. I mean, I don't think we'll object to this access to show.
I don't have that authority.
So our homework is to get, obviously, we thank you so much for some of the questions because it helps us get some answers for you or provide those as part of a criteria that we can build a story for. We will put out an email regarding possible dates for mid to late May, and we will also be sending out this presentation. Beyond that, reach out to Lena or Jeff with any of your questions and we'll try and get those addressed too.
One last piece of homework if we can. I know we kind of got a general idea when we looked at the roads and then saw where the alleys were, but if we could get the neighborhood grouping with the overlay of the alley grouping. I wouldn't worry about just the
okay.
straight PCI.
Okay,
Let me make sure I understand. You want the map of the neighborhoods that we have identified.
Correct.
Together with the alleys, the top 25 alleys.
overlay.
Overlay, yes, together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the roads
I'm not familiar with it all, so any pictures will help me out tremendously.
They're in, okay, they're.
We'll get those.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll send that out now so that you guys have some visual aids as well, part of, next video.
Anything else?
What about rooftops? I mean, how do we?
That's good. We'll work on that too.
Yeah.
I can't promise that now, but,
Right.
but we'll certainly have that
Yeah.
in
I think-
short
I think that would
order.
be helpful, because I think we
Yeah.
need to consider that along with the PCI.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
How many homes along
Do
a
you-
certain linear frontage would give you a good perspective?
A question though, do you want, so we have two ways of looking at these, the top 25 streets or the neighborhoods. And as I said, maybe we want to take one of those neighborhoods off because it didn't have a lot of overlap and use it to overlap with some of those top 25 streets, and that would be an option. But do you want us to look at rooftops for both the top 25 streets and the neighborhoods, or one or the other?
Can we see rooftops on the overlays?
That, well, you can, but I don't recommend trying to count them. So,
I would recommend neighborhoods,
neighborhoods.
just because of the feeders.
But we- you
people
know
might
what,
not have
I
that
do wanna
strength, but they'll
include-
feed into those strengths.
I do want to include that other neighborhood. I think we should look at that. As a,
So also, when we go into, obviously, we want to prioritize neighborhoods and our worst roads and also consider the other aspects such as clay pipe and traffic and all of that. But is there any consideration regarding roads, major thoroughfares like Chisa?
well, Chisa's under, yeah, but I know what you mean.
Well, the north
Oh,
one.
Strady
Chisa.
came up.
Oh,
Strady, well, yeah, that is a.
And we're not going to get a high
Well,
rooftop count on that, so.
Yeah.
Hickox is another one that probably needs looking at.
The challenge with those, we have to consider it. The challenge is that when you get down to budget crunching, you're gonna quickly realize that probably you don't wanna do it, because they're gonna eat up over half of your costs for,
That's why we thought Strady.
Strady.
Did you just do Hickox? Say just.
Well,
That was 20
over-
years
that was
ago.
after-
It was resurfaced recently.
Yeah, in 7 years it will be back to, or actually less than that, 5 years it will be back to the rules.
The asphalt part was resurfaced.
Because years back, it was lowered.
That was the other part of Hickox.
Yeah, the.
The other
Where have
one.
you been?
Okay.
That was before I was born.
Okay,
Well, it's going to
make
look
me
like
feel old.
north part of Dow Rock every 5 years. It has to be redone, so.
Yeah. Did I see Liberty Grove on it?
That's Merritt Interconnector.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the whole.
Yeah.
that's true.
Where if that interconnector, not saying, not resolving responsibility for being late tonight, but if that interconnector had been in place, I would have.
I've got a quick question for you, Jeff. I don't know if you can tell us, but do you know how our timeline for the Merritt Connector coincides with Jackson Shaw's
I certainly,
timeline for construction?
if,
No,
no, okay, no.
that answers another question. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody have any specific items for the next agenda? They can also be sent in. I don't run it down tonight. All right. Well, you started.
No, so I'd like to compliment you and thank you for your summarization and the fact that we're going to be receiving a lot more data, information, maps, etc. So,
That was a lot of work.
Yeah, this team has been excellent, and they're going to continue to be. And they're going to help us get a lot more data points than what we typically received in the past, so that we can make more informed decisions.
I think if we've got $40+ million of projects, that's possible. But we should use every criteria that we can and factors in order to be able to eliminate something. Okay? That's why I keep asking, or Dale keeps asking, what other factors that we should consider as, for example, rooftops.
Right.
If that's really meaningful,
or if it's not capable. Hopefully,
I think
you would have
It depends.
some comment on that.
On it, right,
Okay.
and absolutely, whatever we can do to make sure that we give you all the information that we possibly can to help make sound recommendations to city council, because ultimately that recommendation will go to city council. We'll be more than happy to oblige, and we will offer our technical expertise to help you make, again, that decision.
Terrific. Thank you
This
very
will be a
much.
lot more transparent process than previous.
Eric, didn't we need to vote on chairman and vice chairman?
It wasn't on the agenda. I think the way we had left it last time is I'm more than happy to continue. If somebody else would like to do it, I'm more than happy to let somebody else do it too if they'd like. I mean, can we,
The chairman and
Yeah,
vice chair were appointed by council for this
Okay.
committee, and until somebody doesn't wish to do it anymore, then there isn't, we won't
That's fine.
vote on the,
Okay.
we'll cross that bridge, or they'll be reappointed. I've already checked
I
with
didn't
that.
know that.
okay,
That's why we took it off, we were gonna
We
put
took
it
it
on
off
the
the
agenda, but we
agenda.
took it off last minute.
very good. That's fine.
So,
I know, sorry, in the last,
So on the next iteration,
the last bond election, I worked on the task force over the Cornerstone.
That's very good.
And that task force did, at the end of the deal, we came back to council and made some recommendations. Should we send that information out to this group so they understand some things that were adopted?
Absolutely, I think there's no harm in,
And maybe even think about talking about that, because it kind of would set the tone going forward and how we're going to deal with some of the.
well, I think we're gonna do things differently, in a more transparent fashion than we've done before.
Yeah.
And that's to make sure that y'all have as many data points as you'll need to make an informed decision. Before, it seemed like, it was this or that, and you had to decide, it's this or that.
Well-
And this is gonna be, well, here's what we have, here's the data points you need to make a decision. And now it's up to you to prioritize what the important things are and then present that to council. So I don't necessarily want to stick to old habits, because the old way of doing things is not the best way to do things.
and this last cycle was a little bit different too, even the norm.
Oh, you mean the facilities?
Yeah.
no, you need to bring the
Yeah, so we're
prior,
on one
Okay.
before.
21.
Yeah.
we can definitely look at it.
I think it's worth looking at. I thought council received that as a presentation and adopted some of the recommendations.
You mean what?
Brian Velarde, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he built a spreadsheet, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
and the ranking thing was a little confusing. I think we tried to tighten that up so it was applied consistently. Jeff was on it. Anybody else on it?
It's a bit difficult with something like this to apply consistency to how to score projects, because like what has been said here today is that we have to consider various factors other than the actual condition, physical condition of the road, but what's under the road, what's around the road, what's supporting that
Right,
road.
but when you start incorporating parks and what's the other category?
Public safety, but
Oh, yeah,
And we try to bundle all that and rank them.
yeah.
There was some inconsistencies between those categories. So, we had subcommittees, they went away, they ranked it, some did 2.5, and we did, we did whole numbers, and it was very confusing when it finally came down to the, where we needed to present something. We had to work hard behind the scenes to try to get it where it was consistent and it made sense.
So you're talking about the scoring methodology.
Scoring.
Yeah, I think
That was
we're gonna
great.
review, that's one of the first things we review after the presentations. And I think all that feedback, not only is it good to have, but it's good to actually discuss it here too, as part of the process. So, absolutely. So if there were recommendations that you had from that one, more than happy to, please share them here. And then, part of this planning and discussion will be how we're going to raise the process. And if we need to work on something, consistency.
Absolutely, if you want to just push that out to us, and then we can,
I can try to find it, sure.
right, and after we through some of this, I'm sure I know we have that ranking criteria that I believe Brian and the team built. We can pull that up, and push it out to everybody. And then, anything that you have for us, we'd be more than happy to put our eyes on it.
but also just to recognize that some of the things that we did before may not be what happens with this group, and, you know, for the better.
Then consider us adjourned.
Good job. We got it.